Hi, I'm Paul Malcolm, the Primary Science Development Officer for Argyll and Bute, and I'd like to share a short case study with you that I've undertaken this term um, in regard to transition from P7 to S1. This was undertaken at Oban High School with the 19 feeder schools from around the area, including pupils from island schools such as Isla and Mull. I wanted to do something different for transition, something a wee bit more involved than just STEM challenges on the day or bringing in partners, and considering other work that's been undertaken throughout my time as Primary Science Development Officer in developing approaches to interdisciplinary learning. I thought this would be a good opportunity to exemplify some of that. What I wanted was a model that could be used as a demonstration of what transition could look like, how it could be a wee bit different, involving some prior learning, bringing together various skills from across pupils' time in primary school and allowing them to evidence them and use them in a project that would also tie together with some of the departments and things that they would learn in secondary school. So this project is titled Our Sustainable Island. The concept was around a fictional island based off the west coast of Scotland, which we called Innismore. The idea was to have an island that was representative of the kind of geography and topography that pupils would be familiar with, and to also relate that to challenges and industries that they also experience in their local communities. So, renewable energy is obviously something that's big in the whole of Scotland and nationally as well, globally. But in particular, we have a lot of renewable energy companies operating in Argyll and Bute, such as hydro companies and wind power companies. And we also have people such as the Scottish Association for Marine Science researching new technologies such as wave power. So the idea was to create a project where pupils would have to determine how they were going to power their their island in a sustainable fashion, considering things like cost, infrastructure considerations, and also environmental impact and efficacy of different forms of energy. So the island was presented to the pupils as part of a prior learning package. This is also a good example of where artificial intelligence can be useful within teaching to help support ideas. Um, I used ChatGPT to create this image of the island because I couldn't find something that quite fit into what I was looking for. So I put in very detailed parameters and some examples of islands that exist that I wanted it to look like, and some of the features that I wanted, preparing ahead for some of the questions and considerations that the pupils would have to ask. For example, what sites are appropriate for what forms of energy? For example, having large flat areas for solar panels, or risen areas or areas that are open or protected from wind, and also access to the ocean. So this was our island, and the image that AI generated was fantastic. It was perfect. It was exactly what I was looking for after a couple of tries, I may add. And then I have superimposed some infrastructure on top of that, some roads and things for pupils to consider, such as where the main roads are, where the single track roads are. A lot of Argyll and Bute is serviced by single track roads, which is a big consideration when you're thinking about developing infrastructure and building. We also inserted a number of towns and things that would also be worth considering, such as access to hospitals, schools, ferry ports, and things like this, and also where farmland was, which might affect considerations. The place names are all in Scots and Gaelic as well, which formed another part of the prior learning, as they all had meanings which pupils could investigate as well. So the prior learning was also supported with a lot of information which was relevant to the island, the number of buildings, the distribution of houses to businesses, the number of pupils in schools, and also the population of the different villages and towns as well, which would feed into the considerations. There were a number of prior learning tasks which were offered. Some of them, as you can see here, were optional. Some of them were required. The ones that were required were to do with thinking about the challenges that would be coming up, which I'll discuss shortly. And the optional ones were just to spend a bit of time considering mapping, geography, and the various different types of environment on the island, and also a wee bit of numeracy, thinking about the average number of people, for example, that would live in a house, because they've got the numbers of houses and they've got the populations. Also, there was a lot of information given to the schools in regards to different forms of renewable energy. This was summed up in pros and cons, and also with environmental impact. This was to allow for a kind of robust assessment of both the efficacy, cost, and impact of the different forms of renewable energy before pupils came to the two-day event, and also to give the teacher a chance to engage the pupils in some research, fact-finding, report writing, and also data handling in summing up the information in the table. This example table was given only for the teacher's version of the presentation for their information, but the implication was that pupils would produce something similar so that they could bring this to feed into their team's decisions on the day. In addition to this, the second part of the challenge was also to construct and build a sustainable visitor centre for the power company and the local community. This resonated with Cruachan Hydro Station, run by Drax, who funded the transition event, paying for the resources which were used. And this Cruachan Power Station is something that most of the schools in the area will have visited or experienced, as it lies just outside Oban. In addition to this, they were provided with some examples that I had from previous classes that I've taught in. Architecture, model making, and building is something I really enjoy doing with pupils. These are just a number of projects that I've undertaken previously, such as designing future classrooms, or again, looking at eco-housing, which I thought might be useful for teachers to discuss with pupils. The pupils were also given a range of examples of environmental architecture, where the architecture has been designed to limit its impact in the environment, or to also reflect the environment or the materials which are available in the environment. Furthering on from that, pupils were supplied with various lists of eco-building materials that were available on the west coast of Scotland. And they were also encouraged to research more. There was everything from locally sourced timber to different types of rocks that can be found and used in building, and even reusing old fishing nets and seaweed for plastics, for example. This is just an example on the day of some of the prior learning I saw which pupils brought to the event. This was of an extremely high standard, I have to say, which was great. The intention was that pupils would come to the event with all their own ideas, and then they would be placed into teams of children from different schools that they hadn't met before or worked with before. So they would have to collaborate together and merge the best parts of all their ideas that they had thought of before the event. So the event took place over 2 days. The first day was crammed full of information for the pupils. It was quite a full-on day. They experienced 8 workshops. This was to further inform them about the different types of energy. So we had 5 different people do inputs on the different types of renewable energies. We had Green Power, who looked at solar power. We had SAMS, who looked at wave power. We had Drax and Ali Energy, who looked at hydropower. We had Balfour Beatty, who explored infrastructure challenges and things like road building and bridge building. And unfortunately, we had a partner who was unable to attend that was going to do wind power. So fortunately, I was able to fill that gap, having good resources based around that. In addition to these 5 workshops, which also included hands-on challenges and activities as well, so they were engaging as well as informing the pupils. We had 3 inputs from departments in the secondary school that fed into the kind of process of designing a company and thinking about that as well. So we had art and design, where they designed a logo for the company. We had geography, where they looked at the topography of the island and further considered where was going to be the most feasible place for certain different power sources. And then we had numeracy and maths, where they considered the costs that would be incurred from the different types of energy. I'd personally designed the learning for these classes, which was delivered by the teachers, but the teachers were supplied with both presentations and lesson plans as well. And again, the standard of the work that came out of this was really good and very impressive from the pupils. Again, pupils created individual designs, which they would need to bring to the second day and merge these together to come up with their team designs. In geography, again, this is another good example of how effective AI can be embedded in planning. This map, which is quite small on here, you maybe can't quite see the gradient lines on the map, but I actually put the picture that had previously been generated of the island in and asked if they could create an ordnance survey map of that, paying mind to all the mountains and all the other geographical features, and it produced this wonderful map, which was great. This was also marked with coordinate points, so pupils had to look through the different areas and answer various questions and determine where they thought the best locations would be for different types of power sources, also using numeracy skills to reference these through coordinates on the map. In maths, this was quite challenging. Again, working with large numbers, converting different units. Some of the numbers were in watts, some were in kilowatts, some were in megawatts, so children had to convert between these. Also working with big numbers. This also wasn't straightforward, as this costs this. Some of it was to do with how much money could be generated per watt of excess energy. So it was all about comparing costs and doing those calculations and looking at the data and extracting the relevant data to do the relevant calculations to balance that out and then come up with decisions off the back of that. This is just an example of the different inputs. We were lucky that Oban High were able to accommodate all the workshops within science labs, which was perfect because we had access to sinks and various other resources, which in a normal classroom, the workshops wouldn't have been as effectively accommodated. The second day was quite ambitious. We were going to put the 200 pupils into a hall and have them build their visitor centres. We're very lucky that we were able to receive funding from Drax Community Fund to supply the resources, which included a large number of glue guns and various things like wooden dowels, sticky back cellophane, cardboard, Corex sheets, and mini wind turbines to build into the visitor centres. In the morning, before we started, we had a comprehensive discussion with pupils just around the inherent skills that would be used and what we wanted to see. We were looking for particular skills. The winners would be judged upon evidencing good communication, collaboration, creativity. sense making of all the facts, initiative, critical thinking, and then we also wanted to see evidence of the design process and the children spending the morning doing both their logo and a design for the visitor centre and also thinking about themes of sustainability as well. There was quite a lot of work went into the logistics and resourcing of this, as well as the organisation on the day. Staff at the secondary school were very giving with their time, and also a number of primary practitioners also came to support the event. So before break in the morning, children spent their time creating the logos and also compiling all the information from the day before, selecting the power source that they had chosen, including the pros and cons of this and why they had made their choices, including cost and environmental impact and all the other considerations that they'd made. And again, the output from the pupils was much higher than we anticipated. There really was a fantastic area of work that came out from the pupils during the day, and a really high level of engagement as well. After break, between break and lunch and into the afternoon session, pupils then enacted their designs and collaborated together in smaller groups. I should say that the first day the pupil body was split into 8 groups who rotated around the workshops, and the second day we then subdivided those 8 groups into smaller groups of about 5 pupils. So it was teams of 5 that they were ultimately working in to complete their project. We had 4 stations around the hall. We had 4 glue gun stations manned by teaching staff, and I myself manned a station where pupils could use craft knives for some of the more intricate work for the models that they wanted to undertake. The level of responsibility from the pupils was exemplary, and again, the level of engagement was wonderful. So the output of this at the end of the day was a selection of 32 sustainable visitor centres with logos and justification for why they had chosen and built the visitor centres in the way they had, where they were going to put them, what kind of power source they were going to use, why they'd chosen it, considering costs and, again, environmental impact, and also thinking about how many new roads may need to be built, or bridges, or access to ferry ports, and all these considerations. So again, the level of output from the pupils was just fantastic. Was much better than we expected, and certainly a model that will be used again by the school moving forward. This was our winning visitor centre for a various number of reasons. Input was taken from all the adults that were there from during the day. Consideration was given to everything from the model to the considerations to the presentation of the information to the logo, and this was just a really well-rounded piece of work, and also a really lovely bit of architecture that was really well thought out as well. The feedback from pupils was overwhelmingly positive and really robust, and what really jumps out from a lot of the feedback was the level of both enjoyment and engagement, but also the number of times that the word learning or what I learned was mentioned, which wasn't provoked by any adults. We just asked them to give feedback on both days and what they enjoyed, and the mention of what was learned was really a natural occurrence, which was wonderful to see. And in particular, I was quite heartened to see how many people said they had made new friends and met new people, and also there were a number of comments about how pupils had learned to work with people that they didn't necessarily get on with or know, which was wonderful to see. So this message sums it up. It was a really positive couple of days. It was a really successful project. There was quite a lot of front end work went into this project, but it was really worthwhile. The secondary school is going to capitalise on this at the start of the term and utilise the project to inform some of the initial work that pupils will do when they come to the secondary school. They were grouped together in what will be their practical science groups, So that also served the purpose in pupils having got to spend a really good amount of time and really engaged, involved time with pupils that they'll be working with when they come up to the secondary school. In addition to this, the additional funding that we got from Drax is facilitating me bringing out both a principal teacher from primary and also the principal teacher of science from Oban High to develop two other similar projects and the resources to go with the prior learning and the lessons, so that this case study will go alongside three sets of projects that secondary schools can adopt and use going forward. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have any other further questions, you can feel free to get in touch. Thank you.